after hearing Jim McDermott, I'm thinking the Beach Boys song about wish they all could be California girls. Wish they all could be California voters, maybe, because you've imported a few of those. Marshall, why didn't you come to South Carolina? So he came with his help, but not with his vote. So that's amazing. I'm on the opposite end of that. And we're going to get that word. I'm not sure it'll take a year. It may take a little longer in South Carolina. But I'm here to give you a Republican definition of sustainability. And no, it's not having an extended range gas tank on your SUV. I know that's what some of you would think, but no, I'm here for a different definition of sustainability, which is making a profit. And it's a definition that I heard from an entrepreneur in Spartanburg, South Carolina, named Carlos Gutierrez. Carlos was with Milliken, Georgia Tech engineer, came to Spartanburg, worked for Milliken, got into a business taking the silver off of X-ray films. X-ray films went the way of the hula hoop, because now we do that all digitally. And so he switched into recycling PET. I'm looking around here for a Coke bottle or a water bottle. That's PET. There's one up there. And so what he figured out how to do is how to recycle that very effectively. In fact, Carlos can sell to Coca-Cola recycled PET at a price point lower than virgin PET. And when the virgin manufacturers heard it, they said, that's impossible. He said, watch me. So what he went to work doing is figuring out how not to melt it, how not to put the energy in to melt the stuff down, because that's what they assumed he was going to do. Carlos went to Japan and got rice sorters. There are rice sorters in Japan that as the rice falls over it, the computer detects whether it's a dark piece, a malformed piece of rice, and it shoots an air jet at it to kick it out of the stream. And so Carlos has his ground up PET fall over this thing, and it shoots air at it. He's basically able to sort the pieces into the appropriate bins and various other very complicated, sophisticated equipment. And the result is he's making a profit beating the virgin manufacturers of PET. And he's the one that gave me this definition. He said the definition of sustainability is making a profit. If you can make a profit, it's sustainable. If you can't, it is not. So I think it's a very good definition. As a Republican, a conservative, a capitalist, that's what I accept as a definition of sustainability. So the question is how you get there, right? Now I got to tell you that there is a little departure here along the way in talking politics here, I guess. Right now, my party is not thinking very conservatively. It's thinking in terms of populism, which is quite different than conservatism. So I got a BlackBerry message one day from Newt Gingrich, who, has been such a wonderful dreamer of conservatism and articulator of it over the past. But he sent me this email. I was on a little list. I'm no longer on the list, but I was on this little list, and he said, "What do you think about this, folks? Drill here, drill now, pay less." And I was on my way to a groundbreaking in district, and I emailed back to him quickly. I said, "Newt, do we have to be credible?" And while I was sitting at the groundbreaking, I'm buzzing, and so I pulled it out, and it's Newt. "What do you mean?" And I wrote back and said, "Well, it's not credible. That third thing, pay less. It's not credible. Have you heard about the growth of China? Have you heard about the growth of India? How do you figure that you're going to pay less? It's not possible." And so what I think is unfortunate is right now what should be conservatism it's populism that's passing as conservatism hasn't thought this through. And it denies, I think, 4 key elements of being a conservative. One is our heritage. Been to a national park lately? That was a Republican that did that, named Teddy Roosevelt. It denies many members of our coalition. You know, Christian conservatives, for example, of which I am one, who would say that this is a matter of stewardship. Since when did it become conservative to say that we can drive my SUV wherever I want to and I got a God-given right to oil? How did that become conservative? I was going door to door one day, I'll tell you, and ran into a lady who told me whoever they is, want us to have smaller cars. And she said, you know, we got a Tahoe, we got a Suburban here in this house. And she said, you know, what do they want us to do? I mean, we've got stuff to carry around. This is a retired lady, and presumably her retired husband lives there with her, right? And so she says, what do they want us to do? I got stuff to carry around. I got 3 cats. And so, I don't know about these two great politicians, but I just sort of said, thank you very much. I figured there was no hope at that door, just move on. You know, I cannot give the lady an explanation about what to do with her 3 cats, other than perhaps take them out of the cargo carriers and let them run free in the car, or maybe leave them at home. But anyway, so it denies, one, our heritage as people that are conservationists. 2, it denies a significant portion of our base, which are people that should believe and know about stewardship. And 3rd, it denies basic economics, which is the thing that we conservatives should be very strong on, is we believe in the role of markets. And here's where I got into a lot of trouble. Because not only did I say that climate change is real, this is not something you're supposed to say in a Republican primary, but I also had the audacity to propose a revenue-neutral carbon tax. And I can call it, see here, a revenue-neutral carbon tax. We started calling it that, but what we found out is when you say the word carbon, Republican primary voters started to break out in hives. When you said tax, they go into anaphylactic shock. And, so what we switched it to was revenue-neutral tax swap. And if you can get revenue-neutral tax swap, if you can get swap out fast enough after the tax, then you do not have to have a whole supply of EpiPens. You can get past that. I propose this revenue-neutral carbon tax, and I tell you, if you think it through, in other words, get rid of the populism, think conservatively, think in terms of markets, think about Carlos Gutierrez and the definition of sustainability means making a profit, how would you like to compete with a restaurant? By the way, I had a wonderful lunch today, and thank you for whoever arranged that. How would you like to compete with a restaurant that gets maybe free or subsidized food? And you're across the street trying to compete with that restaurant. Well, that's the situation with all the renewables competing with the incumbent technologies of coal and petroleum. And until you force those fuels to internalize their negative externalities and be responsible for them, back to that key constituency, that's a thing called accountability. That's a biblical concept. That's what we should be all over as conservatives. He said, no, don't let coal and petroleum get away with these negative externalities. Be accountable. Biblical law says that I can't do on my property something that harms your property. And so, therefore, we should say to petroleum and coal, hold your stuff on your property. Pay the freight. And when you do, you change all the economics. And suddenly, you have competing technologies making a profit, hiring people, making money. And that's a great thing because that's a definition of sustainability. So we're off on that economics part. And the 4th place we're off, and I'll stop with this, is when we go with this populism thing and we don't stick with true conservatism. We're way off on this national security gig, which is our big gig. You know, I've had the opportunity, I'm sure these fellows have, of being in Iraq and Afghanistan. I've been in Iraq 5 times and Afghanistan 4 times. And I just think that if you're a leader in Washington and you can't think of any other way to get through this next century than to land somebody else's kids in the Middle East to fight for oil against the Chinese, then it's dereliction of duty to not do So to continue to be hanging out there with this national security risk and to think that somehow we'll just go get more of what we need, well, maybe they don't want to sell it to us. And maybe the Chinese will get there before we do. And the result is that we have a huge national security risk that the markets are not able to recognize. And as a result, it's not being addressed. And so if we could get off of the populism deal and get toward true conservatism, I think we've got an alternative that can solve it, which is the revenue-neutral carbon tax. And be happy to hear your questions about that concept later. Thank you very much.